Hello, I am back to embark upon my expedition into the Into Thin Air literary canon, but I've learned one thing so far, and is that I don't know that much about Everest or mountaineering, and I think I need to do a reset and return to some basics, really get into digestible media about it before getting into more serious nonfic again. And so I decided to go with some children's books about it. So here we have Where is Mount Everest? It is one of those biography series where they have the big bobblehead guys. No bobbleheads on this cover. It seemed like the most general young reader's book about Everest, and I want to see what they cover in here. Any new info to what I've already gotten from Into Thin Air and The Climb. It's also written for small children, so hopefully I should understand it. Then we have a book that is specifically about the Mount Everest disaster of 1996, per the title. It is illustrated. It's quite thin, slim volume. It's part of a series where they write about some other disasters. Like, there's one for the Donner Party. I would have eaten this up as a child. Yeah, my favorite book as a kid was about the Titanic. There was one in particular I would check out from my school classroom lending library, and I only read that book in second grade. So you know, I understand the audience for this. It was me, and it's still me now. And then finally, we have a choose your own adventure book about Everest. You're in this group that's the youngest team to ever attempt the summit, and there's 26 possible outcomes, but only one of them gets you to the summit and back in one victorious piece. And I've read up to the point where I need to make my first decision. I think I already know what that decision is going to be, but I wanted to do a check-in before I do this. I want to see if I can one and done it and get the correct victorious ending. And then obviously I'm gonna bop around afterwards and see stuff, but I'm not going to approach this in the sense of wanting to be a completionist. I'm not going to read all 26 playthroughs. You know it's gonna be good when in the beginning, let me get to it, there is a warning from the publisher that it's dangerous, don't do it, don't listen to us. If you do, we tried to vet it the best we could, but obviously, yeah. There's a lot of questionable stuff going on, mainly why this team of 13-year-olds, very strange stuff. I'm gonna need to suspend my disbelief a lot for this one, I fear, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see where I end up. Okay, so I've finished, I actually don't quite know the title of this book. Worst Case Scenario, Ultimate Adventure, Everest, it's hidden by the library sticker, the Choose Your Own Adventure. And I won. Yeah, pausing for applause. But technically I had one misstep, but I disagreed with their judgment, so I kept on tracking. There was one part where at Camp 2, I took a short nap because I needed rest instead of going out on a little walk, and then it said I developed altitude sickness. I don't think that would have been a difference from just one walk. So, you know, so technically I lost, but a loss in a sense where I didn't die. I flipped around. There were some instances where they could die. So this book follows YN as you go through this expedition as the youngest team. There's two other children, they're 13. You have this insane beef with one of the guide climbers on the team. You're like, he's out to get me. He doesn't think I'm ready for it. And it's to be fair, you're not. You're a child. I don't think 13-year-olds from globally like flying in should be climbing Mount Everest. I still don't even think like probably 13-year-old Sherpas should. I digress. So yeah, definitely would not want to climb Everest, but I only got endings where I lived, at least, before I was just like flipping through to see like what could go down. The good like true ultimate ending, there's some that were still like, oh, like you can go back next year, or like other ways of victory and whatever, but there was one ending in particular that was like the one you're really gunning for. We're on top of the world. Congratulations, you've achieved the ultimate success. This branch of the story ends right after you summit, and then it's like, and then we got down. I guess decisions were made leading up to it that could lead to like better conditions for the descent. I was flipping through and I saw some of the other options. You could summit and then still get fucked up coming back down. So it wasn't just the summit being the end there. But for this being like the one true success path, I feel, yeah, it might be a little incomplete since it didn't have information about the descent. But, you know, I'm nitpicking. All in all, this is decently solid. I'd give it to a child. I don't think it's harmful, especially probably because none of them are going to be climbing Everest, hopefully. So, you know, a little fun. And they had a climbing consultant, David Morton, who was like too young to be like involved in the 96 disaster, unless, you know, he was a 13-year-old. So yeah, solid stuff. Again, crazy beef that this main child had with this guide. And then it's sponsored by this video game tycoon. And in the true ending, it's like he's learned what it's like to be a part of a team and not a sponsor. So he's like, he's about to make the kids take a picture with like the video game logo banner. And he's like, no, I think I actually just want a picture of you three. And I'm like, I don't know, take a picture with the logo. You know, that's how sponsors work. Like, it's not too crazy. Then next, I don't know what I want to hit upon right now. I kind of want to leave this one for last, but I think I can blow through this first and then do this later. I'm gonna paint my nails soon. I think I'll read this, report back, and then get working on this bad boy when I'm doing my nails. Okay, I just finished the Mount Everest disaster of 1996, and I have thoughts. I didn't like it. I'm not the intended audience. This is just a personal thing. No offense to the illustrator. This is just like not my style of art. It's like Uncanny Valley vibes, but more so about how the information is presented. I'm confused who this is for, because clearly it's for kids. If this was just like a lot of name dumping, like I could barely keep it straight in here, and I like know what happened. I feel like this would be a lot to digest for a child who was coming to this without already reading 2 books about it, like big books. There were some things in here that I found confusing. Like, it claimed that some members of the South African expedition were also summiting on May 10th, and that's the South African expedition, according to Krakauer and Into Thin Air. The guy leading it was unhinged, and there was the leaders of all the expeditions were getting together the summiting schedule because they wanted to avoid traffic jams and stuff as much as possible, which we see here. Good call. And the South African team, they were like, yeah, we'll probably end up summiting on the same day as all of you though. But they just like weren't up for it that day. They were all like spent, so no one summited that day. At least it was not said in Into Thin Air, and I find it shocking that that would not be in Into Thin Air but be in here, because this book is very focused on adventure consultants. Clearly it's about the disaster. There's a section about those who died towards the end, and it's like it's nearly all adventure consultants. except for Scott Fisher. They're like, oh, and then there was 3 guys on the other side of the mountain. Which I'll give it, this is like percentage for real estate. This book is one of the ones that talks the most about the Chinese side of the mountain. So yeah, I need to read more about that. I guess this is like a primer, but again, very focused on adventure consultants. A lot of things I think were like left out. There wasn't room for nuance, clearly. This was like 30 pages, mostly pictures, like some digs at Mountain Madness. Like, Mountain Madness wasn't making their clients use oxygen, but Robert Hall was. When actually all of the Mountain Madness clients used oxygen. Lene Gamelgard did not want to, but did end up using it. You know, it was only Anatoly who didn't use it. And there was one part about the rescue, the only show that Anatoly made in this book. Look what they did to my baby girl. It was like, it's just very brief bare bones about the rescue, and was like, he left Beck and Yasuko. Like, with the storm still raging, he had to focus on those he thought could be saved. And then it shows someone else asking, what about Beck and Yasuko? They are dead or close to it. We will send people later to check. Like, that didn't happen. That's not it. Like, I don't know, just that kind of makes it seem more intentional, when technically, if we want to talk, because they didn't even like know Beck was there at the time too. If we want to talk about intentionally leaving Beck and Yasuko, that's what the remaining adventure consultants did the next morning when they went to go find them, and they were both still breathing, but barely, and they're like, they're down. And you know, that's just like how it is on the mountains. And then Beck just ends up reviving himself. More to come on that when I read his book. This was doing too much, and I don't think it did it very successfully, unfortunately. I don't think I would give this to a child. I think there'd be other better things to give them, but I don't think anything more specific about, like, specifically this that I could give them. I don't know, I'm feeling a little wishy-washy. I'm kind of like, I know it's for kids and it can't be perfect, but I'm finding it confusing. Just what it's doing, how it did it. It's not working out for me. Okay, next, I'll be reading Where is Mount Everest? Okay, final update. I painted my nails and I finished Where is Mount Everest. I think this book was easily the most informative of the bunch, but it's also like the longest. It also has like more words on each page, because I think this one, strictly speaking, has more pages, but a lot of it is like pictures. There's still pictures in here, but this is meant to be more informational, and this is like its own story fiction, you know, although there is like some fact in here. Like, I was shocked they got into like Hace versus Hape, which are like altitude conditions. Again, unfortunately was not so impressed with, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I guess I should speak about this one more. So, Where is Mount Everest? Very solid. They kind of get like really in the weeds, like talking about mountains rising and the core of the earth being lava and all these other stuff. I guess it's like good to teach kids more things about stuff. Like, they're picking up this book not just to learn about Mount Everest, or they can and also learn other science world stuff, history, you know. And but I already know about the plates of the earth and whatever, like the core layers, crust. I was here for Everest content, and there was still plenty. There was a few mentions to the 96 season, but mainly, I mean, it covers everything. That's not like the biggest deal. More to do with more fatal disaster in 2014, was it? Where like 14 or 16 Sherpas died. If only I could check. Yeah, 2014, 16 deaths. Again, it kind of gets decently into it for like a children's book about Sherpas sort of needing to perform in this industry to make money, the amount of money they make from these expeditions, although it is like essentially negligible in the sense of how much money the people doing the expeditions spend on these expeditions. It is like a lot of the income coming through to these communities and people. And then also after they died, when they were setting up the ladders in the icefall and stuff before the all the groups got there, the families each got like $400 in reparations. So that season was called off because they went on strike. And yes, good for them. Unfortunately, situation happened. I don't know what the conditions are now. Again, I've mainly focused on 96. Yeah, I'm looking to read more ideally about Sherpas, but I need to do more research into which books to read. It's not like Beck Weathers was there. I'm gonna read Beck Weathers books. Again, teasing the Beck Weathers episode, but talked about the first Sherpa to climb Everest. His son also summited in 96, and he has a book about it. He was on the IMAX team, so it's not been prioritized as quickly, but I will be reading it. Jamling Norgay Sherpa summited. This book, for all it got into about like the Sherpa people, again, I think of all the things about Everest, that is probably one of the aspects that this had the most information on, which was nice, but it did kind of edit out like naming conventions and that like they all use Sherpa as a surname, which I thought was like kind of weird to like not include that if you're like including all this other stuff. And they would just like chop off the Sherpa of whenever they would talk about a Sherpa and give their name. I don't know. Food for thought. That's just something I noticed, but I don't know much. All in all, yeah, pretty solid, pretty informative, especially if you want to learn about other stuff outside of Everest too. There was some stuff about the moon landing, you know. I'm rambling. So yeah, I would say this is probably my least favorite book of the ones that I've read. While it is the most pertinent to my interest in this specific event, because it's about it, it wasn't giving me anything new. And again, it was like hard to follow. It's like I could only kind of make sense of what was going on because I already knew what happened. But then I was like, some things where I was like, the South Africans weren't there, not that I heard at least. And I can't imagine being a child, like knowing nothing about this and then trying to like keep this in your head, you know. I'd be confused. Again, also very heavy bias. This feels like a graphic spark notes of Into Thin Air. Then I had the most fun while reading this, but I don't know if I would go here for like a source of information specifically, but it was fun. I should do more Choose Your Own Adventures. They're silly. And then yeah, this was solid, albeit like a nonfiction book for kids. I was bored, and also I was like, yeah, some of the stuff I know, not exactly the target audience. Yeah, this was, I think, the winner of this episode for giving me the most grounding in information, filling in some gaps I might have, although I did notice some gaps myself. But yeah, I also do appreciate learning more about Everest outside of just 1996, even though that's like my bread and butter here.